Here we go. So, this is the regular meeting of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission. It's October 9th, 2017. We will start out our meeting with public comments. The typical, no one's here to give public comments.
Sure, guys.
We won't bring in the AV guys. We'll let them do their job. All right, moving on is the review and approve minutes from our September 28th special meeting.
I had one comment, which
Yes.
I can't remember.
One comment that would you like to look at the minutes to refresh your memory?
I think I sent you the comment. No, don't tell me then. I've had major computer catastrophes today, so.
Was it a spelling error or?
No. Something that we talked about that wasn't in the minutes.
Public, so we had Sam here. Approved minutes. Oh, the web, was it website?
Maybe it was something in the website. I think it had something to do with, we discussed using social media and getting people to, like, have a competition, getting people to write in and photograph stuff as they walk.
Yeah. Yes, I vaguely remember.
I remember that, but I didn't write it down.
All right.
So what do we do in that case? Amend them?
We'll amend the minutes. We'll add a line about, here, you.
Just about, we
Okay.
talked about how effective it would be if we had, particularly the student groups, when they're doing their work or their trail work, to take photographs and encourage other people to take photographs and get them onto all social media.
That's a great idea,
Documentation, I guess you could say.
Okay.
especially this time of year. Yes.
And if we could have an app, by the way, that, as they do, that puts it on all social media and you go online. That would be great too.
That would be great.
Okay, so
We'll
once
leave
that's
that for
on there,
another
can we,
agenda
For you. Yeah, right. You're the brains.
once that's on the new, the newly improved minutes, then can we still make a motion?
Yeah, so I move that we
Okay.
approve the minutes as amended.
Okay. It's amended.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right.
Okay.
Any other comments about the minutes? All right.
Oh, yeah, I've commented, the date changed on the hike, which was November 4th to November 5th. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
I had some.
But we won't necessarily need to amend the minutes because we did not.
We have to amend the minutes, so we'll just.
Yeah.
That'll be in the minutes tonight.
Correct.
How about
Yeah,
that?
Correct.
That'll be in
Maybe.
tonight's minutes.
Because at the last meeting, it was the
Make that
4th.
comment, yeah.
Since that
Okay.
time, it's changed, so. All right, all in favor of the motion? Aye. All right,
Aye.
unanimous, okay. So, update on trail walks? Frank with his,
Yes, we're doing
November.
Bishop Estate East, Sunday, November 5th, rather than Saturday, November 4th, at 1 p.m. Hopefully it warms up by then. The weather we've been having, I think it should be good if it continues.
especially if it stays the way it
I'm
is.
So
so
give us
sorry,
that
Frank,
date
tell
again
me
for
the
us.
date, tell me the date again?
It's November 5th, that's a Sunday,
Okay.
at 1 p.m.
Okay. Sunday.
Rather than, we were going to do it Saturday, but I had too many conflicts.
Okay.
And we'll be taking a blue trail, and then the blue trail in red across the West River, and we'll head northeast on the North Boundary Trail up to the Regicide Trail and Lookout Point. So it's fairly steep. I guess, Lehman, you've been up there, and some of the other folks have.
Yeah, it starts in the Darling, and then
Yes.
it'll go
It's
up,
gorgeous.
up West Rock.
And where are we meeting? Right at Darling?
Yeah, well, there's parking right there at the Darling House, so, yeah, we can meet, and there's parking right there, so that'll be the address. Should be interesting.
Is it purple now up there?
They did change the blazes, I remember that was a bit of a controversy.
Because it was, yeah. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
As long as they're blazed.
That's right.
We don't get totally lost. Cool. And that was, sorry, I wanted to make a note of the time.
1 p.m., yeah.
That's right. All right.
It should warm up by then and be in November, you know.
being November could
Should
be
be a pleasant
chilly
day,
or not.
hopefully.
Right. All right. I led the trail walk at Massaro this past weekend. Leland joined me. We had a small turnout. It was coinciding with Family Fun Day. And we had 10 people, adults and kids, that came along on the trail with us. So I consider that well attended, given historical attendance on our trail walks. It was fun, great weather. The kids were very interested and engaged, which was nice. And they weren't just walking along. And it was a new trail for everybody that had attended. And no one had been on the Massaro Trail before. So it's a short 1 mile loop, very easy to go through. Leland, I still have you down for December 9th.
Yep.
And the plan was to go from the Darling House sort of south along the West Rock face.
And I have not contacted the West River.
Coalition?
Watershed Coalition, I'll do that, I can do that.
Yeah, so
I
if you could let them know. I
Yeah,
did write
definitely, I'll let them know
a
the
letter,
date and
our state geologist, and he thinks he will be able to attend to.
what was
Excellent.
the time on that? Did you decide, do we have a time
I
on
don't
that?
think we did do a time.
I don't know if it was on there, I don't remember if we have a time on there.
I think-
Morning?
7 in the morning's good.
Some of us will be there, most would not.
You might
Yeah, what, I don't care what time you guys like to
December,
do
it's
it.
December, so.
What, is that a
Brett,
Saturday
are
or
we
Sunday?
waiting for it to warm up again?
We have a
It's
Saturday.
Saturday, December 9th.
Yeah.
So how about 1? 1:30, let's say?
Yeah.
Have
that's
lunch,
fine.
have a nice lunch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's do it again.
yeah, I'll,
I have something October Country Club walk, are we doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me get into
Sorry,
that
okay,
as
sorry.
well.
So you'll call the commission people, right?
I'll
Thanks.
talk to the West River Watershed Coalition,
Great.
and I'll have them put it on their
Great.
schedule. Sure.
Yeah, and I
I'll
think
do that.
getting a geologist is a great idea.
Yeah, that's gonna be great.
Especially given the geology of West Rock.
Yeah.
It's hard to miss when you're walking over all those stones and staring at a wall of it. On October 28th at 10 a.m., Country Club of Woodbridge walk. So this is added to our rotation because there was interest from the community to have yet another walk there. I mean, people can walk there, and they do right now.
What time's that one?
10 a.m.
We should do it while the grass is short, so.
But we've got, it's,
Next week.
yeah, it's not too far out from here. So, 9 days
More
away.
activity then.
I can't promise the grass will not grow in 9 days.
That's true.
but-
Yeah, and that's,
But things are slowing down for sure with the
Right.
cold nights.
but it won't be as long as it was or anything, so.
Yeah, the last time we did an organized walk there, it was very cold. And we lost half of the people before we finished.
Yeah, one lady, like, I was, yeah. Yeah, so,
So that'll take us through the end of the year for trail walks. At our December meeting, I think we'll pick up again and start planning 2018 walks. Usually January and February, we don't typically hold walks just because it's unusually cold or wet and cold. All right. Next on the agenda is discussion of the DEEP, the Department of Environment and Energy Protection, Open Space Watershed Acquisition Grant. We have, over the last several years, attempted to apply for this grant with the target property in mind of 1875 Litchfield Turnpike. That's right against the base of West Rock. It's 28 acres. It looked like it was going to be something that was achievable, but because it's got multiple owners, some that don't live here, it's just been very difficult to get an agreement on a purchase price.
Great piece of property.
We still have, I think the assessments that we've done on it are still good if we wanted to go after it again for a third time.
And that's the one that goes all the way through to West Rock and crosses the trail.
Yep.
But we talked about asking them to subdivide.
Yeah, we can definitely ask that question. There's no harm in asking.
Well, because, I mean, it certainly seems there's plenty of access to the trails elsewhere. And there's really no value in the back piece because they're never going to let you go across the wetlands with a road
Right.
unless you're farming.
Right, and I think that the building lot is that back part, so.
Well, I mean, so I think we ought to look into subdivision with them. And it might be, I mean, there might be zoning relief to build on the roadside with a, allowing the land to even be conserved. Maybe they would give it away if they could get zoning relief to allow the front piece to be a building lot. Right? It could be a non-conforming lot with the proviso that donate the rest.
Wouldn't hurt to ask the owners.
Absolutely.
And I'd be willing to read that if somebody introduced me.
Yes, that sounds good, because I have no time in town during the workday to have meetings, so. Let me I'll follow up with Sheila to see if she wants to.
And I can follow up with Bob Blythe too to see if they would be willing to do that. How could I go about?
Do you need like a real estate agent or anything? I mean, no. Like,
No, I'm gonna try and talk to Bob Blythe to get chairman of the inland wetlands to say, and I'm gonna look at the map and see how non-conforming the lot might be.
great.
But that if they would be willing, if there was a conservation
That has to be
easement or a
done through a
donation of the
non-official,
back of the
doesn't it?
property,
It
would they be willing to
Yeah, either the
entertain a variance
person
to
or something to
the inland
the
wetlands
side to
to
that.
allow a building lot up on the,
Would that benefit them tax-wise? I mean, because...
well, sure, I mean, because right now, the chance of it being developed is quite low, because unless
That side
somebody
where the river
farms
is
it.
or beyond the river, is nothing, not much will happen there.
Yeah, and it's not just the river there. I mean, that crossing during wet period of time that's a lot of land to cross.
It is.
That's
So
right.
let me
Yeah,
follow up
absolutely.
with Sheila, because before engaging in any discussions with property owners, we have to be appointed by the town to engage in such,
Correct.
or the town would
Wonderful.
do it directly, so.
So you can do that part from my town.
Yes, I can make phone calls and emails. I can coordinate from out of town. So that property we've looked at for applying this grant towards in the past. Another property that's been doing
Actually, what's the lot number?
1875 Litchfield Turnpike. Another property in town that has been of interest that was up for sale, I want to say 5 years ago, was over on Park Lane. It's 8 acres with one building lot, and it abuts land trust and state and town property. And part of the Blue Trail crosses it right now. So that was another property that could be considered worthwhile.
Is that near the Old Indian Trails?
Yes. Yep.
So this trail is very close to that, if not through that property, I'm not sure.
How much was it for example?
It was between 150 and 200.
And what happened to it?
I don't think it's sold. I think it's just sitting. It was, from my understanding of the history of it, it was inherited through a trust, and they're just sitting on it.
So let's ask Sheila about that.
There's no strong motivation, I think, for them to sell it other than to have.
But let's ask Sheila about that, because that'd be a good grant one to go after. 8 acres for 150.
Yeah, it's sort of a low hanging
Park-
fruit
Park
Yeah.
as well.
Cool.
Park Lane's over near, like Fountain.
Yeah, as you head into New Haven, it's practically, it is the last road on the left. So if you're going
It's like
down
the
Fountain
country
into New
club.
Haven,
You
Yeah,
just right,
yeah.
keep going straight, but is it on the right or?
it's on the left.
On the left.
As on the left as you're heading into.
There, where that was a weird house and then like, going back, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know where it is.
Yes, if what I'm thinking, you're thinking.
Yes.
The house on the
There's like,
hill.
there's like a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's a dead end road.
Right past
Yes.
that.
I know where that is.
And then if you go to the end, you overlook the back of Stop and Shop.
So where's the trail that goes to that though?
Goes all the way across it, out to, if you if you go down Fountain, the trailhead is right before you go to the Merritt.
Okay.
So if you walk there, you walk along the ridge there, you get the beautiful views of the sound,
Okay, good.
and then you hang north, and you go up and around, and you go past through the power lines, and then you come up to that.
The
through that
bank, you end
property.
up in the bank.
So that's the back place, okay.
Yeah.
Good. That's good to know.
So this grant is specifically for acquisitions only. It's not for trail improvements or anything like that. And it pays for up to 65% of the purchase.
What's the property number on the,
Park Lane, I can't remember. I'd have to go back to my notes.
and what's the name of the grant?
The Deep OSWA grant. Here, that's the acronym for it.
Ah,
If you throw that into Google,
DEEP.
I know.
It's acquisition grant.
Yeah.
It's
if you throw it into Google, you'll get to the right page for the state. It's been offered every year. Of course, there's always that asterisk for future offerings, given the state budget situation. But are there any other parcels that folks can think of that an acquisition would be worthy of, that is also not astronomical to ask for? You know, if there's a parcel in town that someone would sell for $2 million, I'm pretty sure that's not a realistic ask. But these other two, they're in a more realistic area. Last I knew, I haven't checked, we had about $75,000 in the open space fund for the town. And we had intended on using all of that as the match to this grant last year.
So is it 50/50?
35-65. So we,
And we can get,
If
we
we-
get a 200,000.
right, if we got the
200,000.
full 65% from the state.
Go back to the Nugent property, we discussed possibly, if we're gonna
Is that what
engage,
it's known as?
no, the Nugent property is the one,
On Litchfield Turnpike.
Yeah, we'll call the other one the OSWA.
at any rate, get back to that one. If we could possibly see if we get an easement for, if we engage a conversation with Mr. Nugent, you know, at the same time, if he doesn't look for a sale, maybe to sell it, maybe we can get an easement.
So the Nugent property is the Litchfield one we talked about?
That's the Litchfield property, that's the eighth, yes.
So that would be like first choice, is what you're like, and then the other one, or we don't have enough of both?
I say let's go, get the deal going, so they give us the backside of the Nugent property and we can buy the other one, how's that?
That sounds
We get an
fantastic.
easement
And
on
then
the hotel.
Been hoping for a long time.
Right in front, yeah,
It's
right
an
up.
monopoly, right?
Yeah.
That works.
I'm sure Maria would love that, because that's right next to her house. Hotel.
Very
Yeah.
tasteful.
The one struggle here is that because we don't have properties rated yet, and that's part of what we've talked about in the past, is developing this rating system to figure out what is of greatest interest for acquisition. It's sometimes difficult when this grant comes around to say, that one because X, Y, and Z.
So maybe we ought to have a category for properties we can afford?
Well, that definitely factors into, you know,
That's not the rating system.
that
yet.
factors into when you want to do it, but in terms of desired attributes of a property, that's what the rating system will sort of flesh out for us. But these two properties have been on the list.
They got a lot of your stuff on them, yeah.
These particular two properties have been on the list. The one on Litchfield Turnpike has been attempted for going back to 2000 and even the late 90s, I think.
So do you have to write a letter of intent for the grant, and is there a deadline for that?
You don't need to write a letter of intent to apply, you just apply.
And what's the deadline for
The
that?
deadline is 2018. I think I pulled it up here. February 1st, 2018.
And when do you actually have the funds if you apply?
They typically come through in the fall, so if we find out of the award happening, usually the funds don't come through, I think, until
But
September.
when is the award?
Pretty shortly. It tends to land in the late spring, I think. And that gives everybody a chance to get their ducks in a row before the money comes through to do what you plan on doing with it.
When does that assessment run out that we had done last year?
I believe the end of January.
Oh,
So when your
really close.
discussion with Sheila, would you put a third ask on that? And that is that if we are awarded the funds in the spring, will the town cover us to a bridge?
A bridge loan of sorts.
Right, to purchase? Well, because if she gives us permission to negotiate, we should be able to tell them when we can close. When we
Yes.
Potentially could close.
Right. Yep.
A range at least.
Yep. We can do that.
Cool.
Any other properties? You're the new brain added to the brain trust up here about what's available in town.
I don't, not that it's affordable, I think those two sound
Yeah,
great.
right.
And I love that probably both of them would rank pretty high in the list you're developing.
They do because they're existing open space abutting other
They have
protected
trails going
properties
through
and they
them.
have trails.
Yeah.
The one on Litchfield Turnpike hits practically
Everything.
everything.
that's-
Close to an urban area. It's a wildlife corridor. It's close to protected properties already. You know, I'm sure it would be a slam dunk if the sellers would be agreeable to a price. So that's what it's come down to over the last few years. So
So
all we can do is try.
Are we gonna be the Conservation Development Commission now?
No. We can develop bridges.
So we're developing
Yeah,
unbuilt landscapes.
just to fix the trails.
That seems ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Develop natural environments.
yeah, green space,
All right.
think positive.
If there's nothing else on the grant item, we can move along. On the agenda, we've got a discussion about the special meeting we're going to have at Alice Newton Street Park on October 29th. So the purpose of our special meeting on October 29th is to walk the park back here with our draft rating system in hand and try it out. Walk the property, see what the property items, or what the rating system items are, and how they correlate to what we're observing and experiencing on the property. And as I had circulated to everybody ahead of time, there was that study done by Yale in 2009 that has a huge amount of information in it. I promise to get you the appendices sooner than J.K. Rowling gives her book. The appendices to that are
You see the
100,
email,
yeah, are 100 pages of fantastic reference material.
That's amazing.
And this Yale study is a document that, as far as I know, only 5 physical copies were made. There's one at the library. There's a couple floating around in town hall. I think others had gone to other commissions around that time in 2009, and it's probably on someone's bookshelf somewhere at home. What I would like to do is take that electronic version and make it accessible through the Conservation Commission's website, because it's a valuable document.
That's a great idea.
It's kind of interesting to read too. I mean, I liked, you know what I mean? I thought it was well written.
Well, it's certainly got some major names, and even then well-known, and now they're even better known, you know,
They had graphs and I mean.
it's
it was
almost
like-
10 years later.
So they were very thorough in their study. So picking this property as our walkthrough, it's been thoroughly studied. For example, on our rating system, we talk about habitats of conservation and concern, or endangered species of animals or plants. All of that's already been studied in this book. So we're going to leverage that on our walkthrough. And I've reached out to the Parks Association, since they're the caretakers and owners. And I invited their chair. He asked if he could invite their board to the walk, and I said, absolutely, it's a special meeting, it's a public meeting.
Is his name Steve?
No, this is Rich Forsilius.
Okay. Because there's somebody there who is interested in coming here, who's on the park commission. I told him, you know, I was just curious. Okay.
So I know Rich is unable to make it, but I'm hoping that some of his board members can make it. So it should be a good time. Now, what I was thinking we have a discussion now about is if there's anything in particular that you'd seen in that Yale study that correlates well with the rating system that strikes a tone with you, or
I picked up on the meadows in that study, you know, where it would be, it would be, what is it, the grass or shrub habitat, where you don't get, there's a certain habitat that certain birds and mammals prefer, and the meadows is very conducive to that early succession forest. You know, in other words, we have a lot of forests, but in Northeast, there's not much of those early succession forests where it's just starting out, and they actually encourage the people managing that to do more of it, to do patches of that early succession forest, because it's lacking in the Northeast. We have a lot of regular forests, but not so much of that. And we also have some of that at the Fitzgerald property, by the way, so we're pretty rich in, I mean, for a small town in that kind of.
pretty good diversity.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Fitzgerald. Part of that Yale study is the Fitzgerald tract as well. It almost blends in about halfway through the document. Suddenly it starts talking about Fitzgerald.
And there was also a lot about the invasive species.
That's what I was going to say. I thought that was the best part.
And what I didn't know was the herbicides seem to be okay. They're not like insecticides. They do not hurt, according to the study, they don't hurt the animals as much as the insecticides. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Is that the one
So
I
does
sent
that
you notes on?
invasive
No.
species correlate
That's the
with the
different
rating
one.
system?
We'll add
Like
that
in
to
other
the-
words, is that pertinent? at all?
Yeah, there's things in that rating system that match up with what they're
Okay,
saying
yeah,
in that,
okay.
yeah, there are the different categories. So I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So sorry.
My only question is there's been a lot of trees cut down in the past year. Is it the hemlock? I don't know what the...
Ash.
The ash trees
Yeah.
back there, so I don't know. That would be the only big change that I've seen since I've been walking. There's a lot of those trees down, they just left. There were some people back there that's been taking them out. I don't know if they should have been taking them out or...
Oh,
They might.
ash
I think
borer,
I
is that
called
what-
police once actually.
She's talking about the ash borer.
because somebody was
Yeah, the
back
ash
with their
borer,
truck
yeah.
and
Yeah, they had to take them down,
I
yeah.
just didn't know if that...
So since the Parks Association manages it, sometimes people will come to the Parks Association and ask for permission to
Yeah,
go in and harvest the downed trees for firewood.
right.
So
But is that good for, I mean, should we leave, I don't know, I don't know. Should we leave the trees to biodegrade, or I don't know. There's so many trees, but but that would be the big difference I've seen back there.
yeah, and definitely the ash trees are the hazard now.
So. Even
So-
down?
No, but if they're not taken
Oh,
down,
yeah.
they become a real hazard.
So I can't remember my notes now, except the one thing that did strike me that I thought would be fun for us to promote is actually having different areas where we, not necessarily flag them, but we know them by markers, that we allow different things to occur. So in other words, in some areas we just allow all the invasive species to go, all of the succession stuff to happen as it happens, and we document it. We're just stewards here. And then other areas we may do differently and bring different philosophies to it. We might think they should be park-type areas. We might think that we want to have, as we say, varied different landscapes. But I do like the idea of actually consciously having almost like different experiment areas where 10 years later we can see, what's happened.
Right.
We need to see if like
I
the
think
invasive species have been advantageous to the environment.
Yeah, I mean,
or something?
but I mean, a lot of the invasive species are so fast growing
Yeah.
that unless they're unless they're controlled very aggressively, then they do take over. So I'm saying in some areas, let's just let it happen, right? And just see what happens.
Why?
Well, because it's one thing to call something an invasive species, and it's another thing to look at the evolution of nature.
That's fair.
And so I'm just saying, I think as conservationists, it's one thing to theorize about these things, it's another thing to actually have controlled areas where you watch what's happening. In other words, they recommend in the, Woodbridge Country Club that we actually maybe even use herbicides and, but take care of the invasive species, the hogwort and the other stuff, and manually pull it out.
I mean, there's lots of tons of pesticides before anyway. I mean,
Oh, on the golf course, I know.
I'm sure the water there is like the animals, I don't know, from some of those pesticides, so.
There's an awful lot of labor involved in mechanically pulling
Yeah.
those out. That's about the resource.
Well, and that's
So-
why they say mowing is not a bad idea.
Right, well, they actually mentioned burning and mowing, but we're not gonna be burning very much.
And there's a spot on the Alice Newton property that is just full of barberry. Just that low-growing shrub that's very thorny. And that's an example of an invasive that just,
In the back there?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's dense, yeah.
it's dense and it
Yeah,
needs to get
it's-
trimmed every year. Yeah.
And it keeps growing out, I know. I
Yeah.
don't know, yeah.
So, put on your thinking caps for that walk at Alice Newton Street Park. I'll see about bringing a copy of the book on that day with
Which
us.
walk are you gonna do though? I mean, there's so many different walks. Are you gonna do just the blue? Are you gonna
I-
go around? I mean, there's so many different,
I think we'll decide once we're there
right.
and how much walking people are up for. At the very least, we'll do, I think, the main trail up to the falls.
I think
And-
the yellow trail back would be good to see along that way. There's a lot of different kinds of things that might be.
Yeah. I mean, I'll happily go through the whole
Okay, maybe.
trail network. I love it.
Me too. Right, okay.
Which way are we going?
We'll figure it out.
Well, where are we?
If there's a fork on the road, take it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we could, but yeah, we'll figure it out on the day of. I know at one point they'd closed off part of the trail due to some trees down and some maintenance that they were doing, so I don't know if that would happen between now and next weekend, but you never know. Trees could fall down at any time.
So they built a nice bridge. Did you see that? Like with the logs? There used to be like a.
Oh, along the north boundary trail? Yeah, I haven't been over it since they did those.
It's really nice.
That was a big scout project.
That was so, I mean, it's like a nice bridge made out of really nice log. I mean, it's not, no nails,
Yeah.
so it's fabulous.
And that's
Point
why,
out part of it.
and that's why
Yeah.
having members of
Yeah.
the Park Association with us would be helpful, because they can answer some of those types of
The
questions.
Boy Scouts do any of that?
The Boy Scouts did that, yeah.
Why don't we have some Boy Scouts on?
Originally,
Get an
they
Eagle Scout on our walk.
originally they had built bridges, and those were problematic and overgrown, so then they built this more natural bridge.
Can we send them an invite?
Yeah. Which troop? Aren't there a couple troops in town?
I don't know. I've sort of lost touch with those guys.
Also, I'm sure if we reached out
And
to
Girl
the
Scouts,
scouts
not
and
just
asked them to do
Yeah, it'd be
something
great,
like that.
especially the ones that
He's
worked
always
on it.
looking for a badge or whatever.
Yeah.
We can give him a conservation committee badge.
Develop our own badge.
That's right. We should.
All right. Well, there's no other thoughts about what might be happening for the walk next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend. Then,
So we have 2 walks.
Yeah,
We have
so
2 walks that
Saturday and
weekend.
Sunday.
So the Woodbridge Country Club walk, are we gonna be doing the reading system? Like, what's is there a purpose of the walk or
That's
just to have
just-
a nice walk?
That's just a nice
That's just
walk.
a
Okay,
nice
good.
walk.
I just wanted to be clear, okay.
Yeah, in the past, so talking about the country club walk on the 28th, I think it was.
Yeah.
And
That is purely just a fun walk. There's no special meeting scheduled for that.
Well, it's
And
also
the
because
building,
people said they wanted to
What is
see.
that ninth, or that whole, what is it, down there? That old building, that's falling apart too.
Oh, the
Halfway
halfway
House?
house, which is a terrible name. but it's halfway through the
Twenty-ninth is at
club,
noon.
the course, can you
Right.
play the course?
The 28th
But yeah, that building.
is at
That's
10.
bad, because I walked by, I was like, it would be good for Halloween. It would be
God.
good.
Oh, but it's not
Building.
safe.
All right, so not on the agenda at the moment.
For the Jason, for the Alice Newton Street Park, we're gonna meet behind the,
Church.
yeah, behind
Yep.
the
And we're gonna use the rating
Almost
system
across
for
the
that
way.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the rating system's ready to go.
It's draft, ready to go.
It's fine.
So it's-
I think it looks great.
We'll try it and we'll
we're gonna
find out.
try it and
The idea is
see,
to
'cause
find
how
its,
else are we gonna
Yeah,
know
we have to
that's
find
right.
its strengths and weaknesses
Yeah.
on a property that's been
that we know?
thoroughly studied.
Right,
Because we're ultimately going to use this rating system on properties that have not been thoroughly studied.
So after we do, we can look at the report and see how we can work, it all goes together and
Yep.
see.
yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Not on the agenda for this evening, but Leland would like it added, is a brief discussion about the draft report. Is there a title to this document? This is an incredibly long title, so you don't need to type it down.
Okay.
This is the draft
Then we're
report
gonna get yelled
of
at
the
by the
rapid
humanity.
biological and ecological assessment of the Country Club of Woodbridge, Woodbridge, Connecticut, with preliminary management recommendations.
Who wrote
Prepa-
that?
Prepared by William Moorhead for the town. So
That
this
sounds
was,
nice. Did you read that?
I haven't had a chance to
Did you
really
send it
get
to
through it, but you had indicated interest in adding it to the agenda.
Okay,
So I'll move that we add a discussion of this draft report to our agenda for discussion.
okay.
That's my motion.
That's the one I sent
So
you.
that was the one that
and-
was sent, I looked at that, that was
Yeah.
pretty good too.
So is there a second
Spends a lot of time.
to
Yeah,
add this
I'll
to the
second.
agenda? All right.
Yes.
No
A
second.
little early morning
Frank
meeting, you know?
seconded.
And any discussion of adding this agenda item? All right, then we will vote. All in favor of adding the agenda item? Unanimous, all right. So now we can talk about it.
Okay.
Oh, right. I'd love to talk about it. I didn't know if we had to do it today, but if nobody's read it, maybe we should just,
Well, I think it's valuable, even though, even I will admit I have not thoroughly gone through it. For those that have, it's helpful, and for those that haven't, it's helpful to hear your thoughts about the document, so that when I go through it more thoroughly, I'll be attentive to certain areas that I may not have been before. So,
go.
and I know you didn't print it out, so I'm just gonna. So your
Right.
comments are highlighted in
I
there.
don't like it.
Yeah.
Karen, I know you
I'm
got
sorry.
it. Did you want to drop any words of wisdom on this document before
this
you?
one?
This is the country club.
She liked it.
I liked it,
Yeah.
because I think that it's kind of a hot topic, this country club in town, and I think having some documentation about the property, something to refer to, its value for, in a conservation standpoint, I think it's great, and I think it gives us something, if somebody was to say, well, we're gonna build it, well, we have some, these are some things on the property that make it valuable in terms of conservation and in terms of value to our town, and why, or even the long term for why we should preserve it, or what it could lead to in the future, because it has all these things, and maybe it could lead to some kind of something else. So I thought it was great.
I'm totally, the first comment I have in here is, how do you develop it as a conservation park?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So basically, you
Exactly.
enhance its value to the public, to the citizens.
Yes.
And you maintain the value of the surrounding properties.
Yes.
And frankly, whatever is going to happen to parts of the property, why wouldn't you
Well, also,
be a good steward? So I couldn't agree with
If any
more.
person in town who hasn't been there and actually walks the property, there's no way that they could not see the beauty and how important it is to me. There's some trees there that are just old and been there forever, and it's just a beautiful piece of, there's so much going on. And again, I think why I walked it the other day, I was saying, is because there's no tree, there's a lot of areas in town to walk that are wooded, But here we have an area that is no trees, so it's beautiful to walk with. No, it's already, there's, it's already in the property. It's a different kind
Not
of.
interrupted by a little white ball.
No, but it's a different kind of, property in town, you know
Right.
what I mean, without tree, I can't get, you know what I mean? So it's
Mhm.
fantastic, so I
Right.
think it's great. That's what I think. I don't know about you guys.
So I thought the part about managing it.
I know you better
Okay,
run.
sorry, thanks.
Did
You know,
the person
it
who
has to be
drafted
managed.
this have an agenda? Like, what did he, what his,
Bill Moorhead was contracted by Ellen right before her term ended,
okay.
at the recommendation of Louisa Cunningham, who did the management report of organic practices at Fitzgerald Tract. So, and it was an attempt to try to figure out what to do with the property in the short term now that there's no golf. You know, should it be mowed regularly? Should it be hayed? Should it just let go? What? So, that was the impetus behind all of the study that was put
But your
together.
question, I think, too, is excellent, because you also have to know who was writing the report. And if you look at all the consultants at the end of the report of who was there are two landscape architects, but mostly the majority of everybody that wrote it is pretty much conservationists that are not inclined to be thinking in
Yeah.
terms of a conservation park.
Mhm.
So the bias is very much towards pretty much letting nature do what it's going to do, and while you protect against invasive species.
I thought I saw a little bit of management involved though. I mean, there
Yeah,
was some management.
but I think the main idea was to protect against invasives,
Yes.
to encourage bird life, and to encourage flora and fauna, but not really thinking in terms of certainly what I think we were thinking of is in terms of a conservation park.
No.
Where there's, and I had sort of highlighted the two landscape architects that were there and saying, geez, I'd like to hear from them a little more.
Okay.
But they did, there was a section where they said that invasive species had to be taken care of because it would deteriorate if it was just left completely unmanaged in that respect. They did mention something about herbicides and physically
Tell you too
removing
keen on
some.
them, yeah. But you're right, that's a lot of pulling.
Yeah. it was a lot of-
Mechanical removal, pulling
Yeah.
weeds is a
how
hard way to
it
go.
got removed and stuff like that.
It's effective, but you gotta, it's expensive if you hire people to do it.
So the other question I had, which I asked earlier today, is what the definition of mowing is.
Huh. Did you get an answer to what the definition of mowing would be?
No, and related to that is what are clippings, but she did give me a sort of a good idea. In other words, are you mowing, are you mulching, are you haying, are you cutting to 6 inches, are clippings like this long or clippings this long? It makes a huge difference in terms of what that does to the environment and to the ecology of
And
what's there.
what sort of habitat supports too also,
Yeah.
as far as,
So this was still just a draft report, as clearly indicated by the giant word draft across every page.
That's what I like about us seeing it now. Right? Or we
Yeah.
think, and I,
yeah, you make some.
We can
the
look at
point
any
was
questions.
excellent about, this is such a contentious piece of property.
It is.
I think it's a real opportunity for us to weigh in on, creating some value, and maintaining some value.
Yeah, well, I
Conservation.
think each one of these committees that has to do with that needs to weigh in,
Right.
you know.
So Coopop was looking at this, I know the Board of Selectmen obviously received a copy of it. So I think everybody spend time to go through it if you haven't already.
Okay.
I certainly don't have answers for all of these questions, but the idea is just to get the brain turning and
So,
Present these
another
questions.
thing that stuck out to me is they recommend not planting any state listed endangered species, which seemed odd to me.
Yeah, it does seem odd.
In other words, if they are endangered, why wouldn't you try and bring them back? Certainly what the water company does, or plant alternate species that fit the same niche. So that was a very surprising comment. So conduct aggressive, ongoing invasive plant control. This is where I had the idea, or was thinking, why not have test areas where you don't do that?
Right.
Right?
Of course, the danger then is the creature
They
gets out of, the
pollinate.
creature gets out of the cage.
Well, but
and
if
now
you're
it's-
doing it aggressively everywhere else, and it's happening in all the other lands that aren't controlled, private lands all the way
Right.
around, to have it a small area where you actually really monitor it, and I don't know, it just seems interesting. I'm not a biologist, but I love the increase in nut and fruit.
Yeah, that was good, I noticed that, the hickory trees, and what was it, another type of tree? Oak and hickory, I think, did they mention those too? I think that was mentioned. Because they
Oh,
provide
here's-
food.
One thing I think missing greatly is benchmarks. Look at nationwide and globally, what are other people doing in specifically with golf courses that are let to go, and they're all over New England, right? But certainly, I'll bet you if they dig deep, there's somebody, you know, a Cornell or a UConn or somebody who's done a paper on it, right? And it'd be cool to benchmark what somebody's done that is considered, you know, the gold standard, what you can do. So that, in terms of research, what I would want to ask these guys to do, could you check that out?
Right. Yep.
So there's a lot of work to be done. You had mentioned how much, you know, we've done in Alice Newton, and a lot of the stuff is not done here, right? All the baseline stuff.
Right.
And I will quickly get through this, so you don't have to listen anymore.
Well, at least we saved a tree. You didn't have to print everything.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't going to print it, I was going to pull it up my computer. That's what. Then the other thing is, I'd love to know what the other towns similar to us in size are doing in terms of what are they budgeting for their conservation committee, for their conservation work.
Right.
I'd love to have a comparison to be able to see what every single town of 9,000 to 13,000 population, how much money in your budget are you spending for conservation?
Right. Because
It's often a lot more than us.
in our town, it's very little.
Right, so, but I think it would be a nice graph to be able to show,
It would be.
right, at budget time.
I think they mentioned another property somewhere else, a country club that was used as a model that they did that.
I missed that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
Will you highlight that at our next meeting?
Well, next meeting I'll have to look it up, but
Cool.
I think they did, you know, something you were saying about that, I'm pretty sure there's something mentioned there. I didn't have that much time to spend on it, but I thought I saw something.
And just as, what's her name again?
Karen?
Karen had brought up, they highlight here how the environment will quickly become a hostile habitat for most humans. And specifically, you mentioned the dewberry and the poison ivy, she mentioned, so, yeah. And then, as you had mentioned, the dominance of grasses, the importance of that, so. The whole last paragraph before they go into other stuff. So Lisa Tarochi and Mike Dudek, I think, would be interesting people.
Those are the two
He's from
landscape-
Sharon, yeah. And I actually, a friend of mine's had him do a lot of work at their place. We might be able to invite him here to talk, which might be fun.
Invite them to the walk, so we can talk on the
Yes,
walk.
that's a good idea.
Great idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's intended to be a fun walk, but it doesn't, but just like our walk along West Rock could have a geologist along the way to talk intelligently
Yeah,
about certain
it makes
things.
it more interesting.
If we could get someone that talks about landscape development in terms of a balance of conservation as well as coexisting with human activities.
I also think if you have a couple of celebrities, people are going to tend to want to come out, right? Not that you're not a celebrity.
I am
or
not
you're
a celebrity. I will make no such claim.
Thank you.
Well, good. All right. I personally hope to get to read this sooner rather than later. I know I threw a lot of materials into everybody, so thank you for taking the time to at least make a strong attempt to digest what I tossed at you just 2 days ago, 1 day ago. All right. Last up on the agenda is the chairman's report, and my report is super short tonight. I'm just gonna knock it over to Lauren.
Okay.
Lauren is our liaison for CUPOP,
Yes,
the
so,
Commission on the Use of Publicly Owned Properties.
so they had a meeting here on Monday. They had, this chair area was full.
They had a full house.
They had,
We've never had that.
we had it once or twice.
That was the Boy Scouts. I don't know if that counts. That counts as like one attendee, just lots of.
One time I had it when I had BU, so let's not forget that. And you said, they're not gonna be public comments, and then it's like 3 public comments. So they had a lot of public comments because they're talking about possibly adding a dog park over near the ice rink, or over near the Chestnut Grove. So there's a lot of opinion on that, a lot of strong opinion both ways. They also had the same, the Sam Waller came to them also for the
Trail Club.
fixing and upkeep the trails, and then they talk about, does that then qualify as a special meeting? Because they also want to be able to label the properties in the same way we are, so that we're not double.
We need to have a joint meeting, for sure.
So,
Laura and I have talked about doing a joint meeting.
yeah, so she brought that up again, and I think he's going to England or something, so in January or February, she said might be good for them. So I said I would pass that along.
Sounds good.
And then the district animal shelter now has potable water, which sounds like a good thing.
It sounds like an important thing.
Yes.
Well, not really.
Well, that's what they seem to think.
Well, I'm on the Animal Shelter Commission,
Oh,
and
okay.
the water company, the regional water company donated almost 40% of the bill to bring the water up the road to, there's a fire hydrant now,
Yeah.
and the water is there. So when we do phase 1 of the animal shelter, we'll be able to bring that water to the building. But right now, it's sitting at the street.
Oh, they don't know that.
What is the building used for water now? Does it have a well?
It has a second well that was drilled because the first well was contaminated.
All right.
And the second well
Yeah.
is no good either.
And planning and zoning has to
There it
figure
is.
out all kinds of regulation. There's all stuff going on there. Okay,
Thank you for going.
yes.
Excellent.
It's been a while since we touched base with them, so I'm very glad that you remembered. And
I am
made the
also
effort.
glad I went.
Was it fun?
It sounds
Yes.
like it was a
Excellent.
lively
Yes.
meeting, so.
Yes.
Usually in the past, CUPOP meetings have been very dull,
No, it was
Um,
terrific.
so, good.
And I think it's important to emphasize that everyone wants to work together, so I think that's terrific.
Yeah, Laura and I have exchanged emails, and there's a lot of commonality between conservation
Right, I
and
mean, I
CUPOP.
almost
And-
think
and
it should be
sometime-
combined,
And sometimes
but,
it's stepping on each other's toes kind
well,
of a
that's what we want
situation.
to
So it's important that we have.
cooperate
yeah,
instead of,
yeah,
yes, instead of competing.
Absolutely. Okay, I have no other items to report on tonight.
I make a motion.
Second.
We're done.
Okay,
Okay, that was quick.
Any discussion about adjourning? Of course not.
no,
I'm ready to go home.
I'm
All in
proud of you
favor?
for keeping it to an hour and starting it on
All
time.
right.
yes, that was wonderful.
Unanimous.
Yeah.